This is why you do not mess around with installing different devices on a computer. Come to shock, battery high. I had installed the Oculus drivers for my Quest yesterday, and they'd taken over all the audio. So that is why. Come on. Says default. There you go. Okay. That should be clear now. There we go. Okay. I was making sure I could hear as well. Okay, so before stream, I was playing around and decided I would see how different Kick was, being that it is kind of rinse and repeat. I figured I'd give it a try and see what happens. Turns out they're not lying about it being pretty much a perfect clone of Twitch. So I'm just decided to add this in quickly before stream. So Timmy, hello, how you doing? And yeah, see if I could get that working. There you go. Shouldn't Kick be lowercase in line 18? I don't think it is case sensitive, but yeah, thank you. I think it would deal with it. And I believe I need all that again over here. Yes, I do. So let's just copy that. I will have to clean this up. The reason I did this morning was I was just making sure I was looking through the code to see if I needed to do any refactorings and cleanups. I was like, you know what, let me introduce Kick because it should be relatively quick. Not meaning to rhyme. And double check those patterns, and then I can do some refactoring later for that scenario where there are they're handled. But I looked through the docs for Kick, and other than some weird rules around what you can call an API, what you can call an app in Kick, it's pretty much identical to Twitch. I mean, we all knew it. We all knew it was a port of the code after a leak. But it's unashamedly similar. Okay, so let's run that. So I figured I'd try and knock this out first. So what we're going to work on today, if this doesn't work, it doesn't work. I'm going to revert and put the Kick stuff back in later. It's only 15 minutes work. Rumble Geek, good afternoon. I was going to leave this piece to somebody else, like leave it as an open source contribution option. But the pattern was close enough. I was like, someone's going to come along and introduce this as another copy. So I'd rather do that now and figure out the similarities and the differences. And then I can set a pattern in place. We were talking last night about like when you write code, everything you write is a pattern for the person who comes afterwards, right? If you write a bunch of code, and someone comes along, it's not good enough to say, oh well, we'll clean that up later. A web page found for id.kick.com. Oh, awesome. Could also make sure that doesn't do that. I don't want to spend a great deal of time doing this, so by their own docs, id.kick.com is let's go here. Link. Link. View. Oh no. Just for reference. id.kick.com. id.kick.com. I don't think I'm doing anything different there. OAuth/authorize. OAuth/authorize. Yeah. Um, um, okay. Well, we're going to put a pin in that one, I suppose. At that point, I'm not going. It was building the URL. It's building the actual callback. So I'm not going to. I'm not going to delete the code at this point. What I'll do is I'll put in. See, this is all I've added. Introduce kick client for linking kick account to Streamline. All right. Commit and push. But now I'm going to put another commit in there that comments out the button and says id.kick.com is not working. Which is not the greatest thing to do. I don't like doing this, but it's better than doing all that. id.kick. You're good. You're good. There's a dog or something outside with a squeaky toy, and it's driving these two crazy. I think I'm about to get jumped. Good boy. Good boy. Nope, it's going back to bed. We've done the job. Okay, so let's put a pin in that one, and move on. What I want to do is I want to make yeah, I need the space sorted out to be able to do that first. So what I was doing that for is to clean up some of the organizational mess of the ifs and whatnot, to try and decide, can I create a factory for these things? Is it clean enough? Can I just genericize how I, because the flow is the same, right? If Kick worked, then the three of these would be the same. There's still other platforms to integrate with. LinkedIn is also a streaming platform. X potentially. You know, so there's other streaming platforms to integrate with, but I'd like to have a pattern. Yeah, Facebook. I'd like to have a pattern in place there that you can say, okay, well, here's didn't Facebook streaming shut down? Because all the big streamers that went over to Facebook ended up back on Twitch. Yeah. So anyway, there's where that stands. So now let's talk about a public API. So my thought here is to open the right liquid developers.stream. Close that one down, bring that one over, brainstorm. So we said initially API, query streamers, flag potentially, and ultimately go live status potentially on streams. I don't think that's necessarily part of the API. That's more hooking into things. We've tackled a lot of the login, the streamer, the about me, auth access. Hey, there we go. I did have calendar on there, right? We don't have remove me yet, but yeah. Yeah. So let's get the basics of an API in. Now, what I'm thinking here, the first iteration of this is realistically just we need new drawing, and this is going to be public API. So what we need here is user what do we call it? Account API key. So what I'm thinking is we have what do we call it? Streamer. There we go. Streamer API key. So if you want to use the API, you generate a new API key, and that will be a one-to-one with your streamer. I won't create them automatically, so you don't have access accidentally. We create a separate project that is an API, public API, and we just provide that key. Not going into JWT, not going into any of that. Just a simple API key, and we'll provide slash streamers slash name as a get to begin with, right? And that will look up in this table for that name, obviously with removing that. So as you go into a stream, they'll have your username, they can look you up and it'll find your streamer name. So even if I log into YouTube and they find me as TBD Develops, actually that's going to be a little harder on YouTube, but yeah, we might have to think about that one. Testing this is going to be a little bit difficult. But yeah, the idea would be that as you find that that name, you'll find the streamer that it links to, and then we'll return the streamer with here's what we'll return name, and that's the streamer name, and we'll return channels, which will be Twitch / channel YouTube right. Tags C#, right, .NET, and blurb. So this will be the name they're publicly known as. So whatever they put into developers.stream, it may or may not match one of the channels. You could put whatever name you want there. You could put your real name or you could put an alias, but your channel doesn't need to match that thing. It can also be formatted like that, right? What do we think? That good enough, do we think? I think it's a pretty simple thing right now. So we need a new screen or a new button in your profile for creating API key, and we'll allow you to copy it but obscure the visuals. And then provide the API endpoint. Yeah, that works. Backend. So the weird thing here is domain, add a new class. So API key is going to be public int ID, public int streamer ID, public string key, public date time. So we'll put a basic API in there, and then what we'll do is we'll look into things like rate limits and stuff afterwards. Before this goes live, this would have to have Um, this would have to have um, some rate limiting, like a couple every um, second or whatever per key. Otherwise, I'm going to, because if you are a streamer that uses the process, the tooling, you could be querying for everyone in your channel. Every second or whatever, you could be spamming the API and not knowing about it. Easy to do. Why did it? Okay, we need to make some changes to somehow my editor.config that I inferred last week is driving me nuts. Why it thought I was liking curly braces on the same line, I don't know. Empty block together, same line. Brace. Is that valid? Object collection initializers. Let's go and have a look at what that is. It's going to drive me crazy, and I'm not dealing with that. So that is this. Sharing the journey very much. C# new line before open brace. Methods, properties. Types. Just say it's wall. There we go. Can't be dealing with that. That's fine. Editor config. Hey, Sir Ammo, how you doing? So, yes, that's very opinionated. However, the style of the code is the style of the code. So the editor config is a way of making sure that that is consistent. So as people contribute the editor.config, if they try and change the editor.config, it'd be rejected. That would be the path. Yeah. Okay. So public db set API key. You know, as I go through the code, there's things I'm thinking about that are like obvious to me, but not necessarily obvious. Things like alphabetization of of this for readability purposes. I'm not as very good at it. Sometimes I screw it up, but yeah, being able to do those sorts of things is useful. Now let's go back here. Public virtual streamer. Make sure that's on there. And now let's go and run the migration. Entity framework core, add migration, introduce API key. So if you're new to the stream, if you have any questions, thoughts, opinions on what I'm doing, you're more than welcome to ask. What I'm working on today is developers.stream, which is a site that I am building to help support developers who stream. The concept is that it will be there you go. One line, thank you. I realized just as I did that I'm like, where did I do the migration stuff? There you go, introduce API keys. Okay, there we go. So, oops, wrong blurb. Yeah, so what I'm building is a site that will allow you to register your streamer, your channels under one name. So if you stream on Twitch and YouTube and Kick, etc., you'll be able to go into the site, link those accounts, and then increase the discoverability. So if you go into someone's stream and you've linked your Twitch account, even if you don't stream on Twitch, if you link your Twitch account, right, it would potentially find you that way. Bit of a challenge there, but you'll be able to control the blurb and the tags that are associated with you. So increased discoverability. If you stream on YouTube and you don't stream on Twitch at all, discoverability is a little harder for developers. Well, for streamers in general, I think YouTube is just not quite there with the platform yet. But yeah. So now let's do this. A server. Most of what I'm focused on right this second, by the way, is the server side of this. The client side, I have kind of neglected a little bit. So we will eventually come back around on introducing them. I'm yet to see how and when I might need them. Okay, so we have a domain entity for API key. Let's create a register API key command. It's going to work very similar to this. Actually, it doesn't need platform identifier, just needs this, and it's going to have result of string. Okay, and what class handler? Command handler. Why do you? But yeah, if you're new to the stream, you have any questions, thoughts, opinions on what I'm doing, you're more than welcome to join in. I am not opposed to conversation. Probably should do that. Like new line before members in object initializers. We'll figure it out. So this one is a repository of API key repository, and it makes sense, but it doesn't. What we're going to do here is find API keys by streamer. If it exists, return string, return key. If not, create return key. And then what we'll do is on the other side, we'll just create a text field that has an API key there. You'll be able to hit generate when you want to get an API key. And then if you have an API key, it will populate it. I haven't shouted him out in a while. If you haven't checked out Dan's stream, Dan streams a little bit earlier than I do. He's a game developer. Has been building his first game for a little while, and it's gone through all sorts of development hurdles and changes and whatnot over the time. But it's a really cool stream to go and hang out in. He's super nice and super chill. I highly recommend going and checking Dan out. Okay. So let's get this piece done. So the way these work, you have specifications. So we're going to have API key for streamer. Now we have the streamer identifier. We do not have we don't have the ID of the API key. We don't have that. So let's figure out how we're going to do that. API key, CTOR, GUID identifier. That's the streamer identifier. Hey, Dota. Good morning. Hope you're well. So query dot where dot include s a goes to a dot streamer dot a goes to a dot streamer dot identifier equals identifier. And actually, this is a nice single result. When you set in specifications, you have to, if you can get a single result back, it doesn't stop you from getting many back. But if you can return a single, you have to specify this interface. I think that's how he handles underneath the differences, like pulling it back. So it's like a flag to tell him you can get one back if you need to. Probably an optimization of some form. So var API key equals await repository. It's not that simple. It would be nice if it had an ID. Oftentimes I don't have the actual ID, so it's not really simple to do it that way. But this is going to be first default async, new API key by streamer identifier, command.user identifier, cancellation token. No. What the heck? Why are you... At what point did I... Okay, you're getting turned off. That was not funny. You're getting totally disabled. That was not funny. I don't know what keyboard shortcut I hit, but yeah. So JetBrains has added their AI to um, um, to the license, so that the Pro AI is now added into the license for the tool set I have. But yeah, that was annoying. I mean, okay, did it get it wrong? Not really. It understood the job. Right? It got the idea. But yeah, that was not funny. So the interesting thing there is I don't have the streamer ID, so I need the streamer ID anyway. I missed the local dev meetups, lightning talks, and AI yesterday. It feels like I didn't miss much. I think we're at that point where I think it's very short-sighted to not pay attention to what it can do and what it does do. I think it is in our best interest to make sure we keep an eye on how AI is evolving from a development perspective. We kind of went into this on one line stream yesterday a little bit, which was a bit naughty because it's not Friday. It wasn't Friday. And diverting the regular stream on that sort of topic was not called for. But I feel that if my job becomes asking a machine to do something for me, like Tyndall added in, well, you're always asking a machine to do something for you. The difference is I'm directing the machine to do something I intended to do. Are there side effects sometimes? Are there misunderstandings of how something works? Absolutely. But I'm not asking it to solve a problem for me. I'm not asking it to figure out how to do stuff. And I don't want to work in that world where I'm just saying, hey, could you create a program that does a thing for me? Like, hey, AI, could you go and get me create a process that allows me to register a user's API key and then allows me to put that in a screen and learn how to say that properly. And then have it go off and do the code. I don't think so. I think it is definitely here to stay. I think it would be short-sighted to ignore it. Apex, good morning. Like, I think companies, people are asking AI to do way more than they should. Oh, I agree. I think the reliance on it is becoming, but the speed at which it can solve those things is people are not stopping to question very much, it seems. Sorry. My entire job relies on AI. Yeah, well, I generally believe that if my job becomes asking a machine to do the thing for me, I am changing my career. I will do coding and stuff in my spare time, and find a different career path to finish out my career on. Because I don't want to be. If everything I do comes down to telling something in plain English how to do what I want it to do, and then having it go off and do that thing, I don't want to do that. My job recently was asking a machine if another machine answered in a way that I deemed was good. Huh? Yeah, I got to figure out this tab. That tabbing is something to do with this as well. Indent. And isn't that level of NLP that we're describing? I still write software like you see on stream. Yeah, my statement was so one line said, well, it's a tool, all right, but I get a lot of my satisfaction from building this, from solving this problem by building this code out, thinking through this solution, evolving the solution, and refining it and writing the best thing I can write. If my job becomes, okay, you know, go and find me a streamer and then go and find me get an API key for that streamer, then I don't want to do that. Right? That's not what I take from programming. So, yeah. Are you okay with enhancing your workflow by using AI? As in, you're still doing software development, but also having AI do a lot of the repetitive tasks. Say you've established a pattern for the way you make POCOs. Would you be okay with it making the POCOs for you that you have indicated you want created based on an implementation plan? I don't want to. I'm okay with the workflow of I go in here and it says, oh, by the way, you've done this a bunch of times. Can we suggest that you want to do this and have me review it? I don't want it going off creating code without me seeing it. I don't want it going off and building the pieces for me. So I don't mind the, hey, you've done this a lot. Do you want me to fill it in for you? I do mind the, hey, you've added A to B to C to D. Let me go and create A, B, C, and D for you in this based off this name and trust that it works, because I can go and check, but will someone's fresh out of college go and check? Will that code always get the eyes on it that it needs? I've seen enough PRs go through with terrible code to understand that people don't pay attention. So yeah, I'm okay with it enhancing my workflow. I don't mind if it offers me the code for the POCO. I don't want it going off and creating that POCO for me. So time saving, yes. Doing the repetitive tasks for me, I still want to think through that problem. And that's what I enjoy doing. It's like, yes, there's a lot of boilerplate stuff. It will help keep consistency, but it can also screw it up. And if I'm just trusting that it's going to do it what it does all the time, I'm going to lose. Yeah, yeah. Go get your coffee. I'm going to try and figure this out, but um, 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 argument. We don't have a streamer. That needs to go. Which means this doesn't need to be. This doesn't need to have that. This can be API key by streamer. ID spec. Um, what do you do in case where data is needed in one part of the application that is not available in that microservice? Um, I definitely don't think AI tooling is going to replace people or be as autonomous as suggested, at least not in the short term, for a lot of the reasons you're saying. I think the companies are of the mindset that it can be, though. That's the dangerous thing. Um, I think the less experienced developers are leaning heavily into that ability for it to solve the problems for them. Yes, you still have to have an idea of what you want it to do. I get that. But you can be very general, and it all comes down to your wording. I also see how my daughter talks, right? Um, so yeah. What does this constructor exactly do? Because how is the query persisted since it's not assigned of the identify spec? So what this is doing, so to me, is these specs are, this is a library from our DALIS called specifications. So these repositories are, um, they're not they're not like an implementation. I don't have an API key repository or a stream repository off to the side. This is a generic implementation of a repository that these specifications get plugged into. The specification is just a definition of what the query will look like. So um, underneath, this is all wired up to ultimately build an expression for Entity Framework. Um, So what I'm doing here is I'm passing the identifier and I'm setting the parameters of the query. And then when I use that specification, it will execute that. Yeah. Yeah. I don't think it's that experienced devs are doing the opposite, but they have a more of a depth of understanding and can use it more precisely. Yeah. So it wraps up the behavior. I can reuse these things. I can also use these things for delete as well as query. So I can delete by the same parameters I queried by. It keeps the code from having a bunch of link or a bunch of queries in there. It tidies that up. Yeah. Like I said, I don't have an objection to using the AI tooling to help me out with things. And I'm definitely enjoying using it as a search tool. Um, Asking it, hey, how do I go off and do this and show me the code? Yes. Am I copying that code verbatim? Not likely. I'm reviewing what I'm seeing. I'm checking its solution. If it's brand new to me concepts, do I do a bit of copy and pasting? Absolutely. But I'm controlling that flow. I'm not having it do it for me. Um, um, and that scares me. That's bugging me. Why indent invocation params? Our team is, it's my opinion, but I think that's hurting you a little. The tooling isn't going away. It will get better, and companies are going to start expecting and mandating it more. Point where I'd almost be good to have someone more junior that is super into AI. Watching someone who has a solid understanding of um, um, how to ask the right questions of AI work is interesting. It's a lot of effort. Like I've seen enough of one-line stuff to know that there's a lot of effort that goes into it. I'm not doubting that there's still effort there. It's just in a different way than I want to do it, right? Um, it can be a lot of effort, and you do have to review it too, critique it. But the amount of effort you have to put in, the amount of stuff it produces, I think doesn't speed you up necessarily if you're doing the right thing. I think it can potentially slow you down because it could create some stuff you don't understand how it works. So you spend longer going off than building it the way you would have built it otherwise. Um, Indent yeah, I don't know. It's this is driving me crazy. It can make up APIs, but using it in the tooling now, is it going to do the same thing? I'm not entirely certain. So yeah. Do I want to do that? Like this new API key, it had this class available to it, right? It still created two properties that don't exist. Because I'd used streamer identifier here, it assumed that was there. Like it had this class available to it. It still didn't have enough context to build what it needed to do. Claude still has its fair share of hallucination, 100%. This was Claude, by the way. This was Claude. I had it set up to use Claude in all this 3.7. So, but this had context. This had enough information available to it to actually know that. Like Claude tried to fill in that test, how much easier is it to just use control space to find out the class properties? I mean, different approaches to the same thing. Like I said, I'm not against AI. I'm not against using the tooling. I think it can be used as a more powerful intelligence, essentially. But intelligence gets to look at the actual library itself and understand what's available to it. It doesn't give you enough information to know whether you should use something. And again, we're talking about it in use of C#. What about others that are using it in PHP, in Go, in Rust, in all other sorts of languages? Is it solving different problems? Is it giving people yeah. Now the one thing I do think it has better handle on is the more modern spec of the language. So when you're looking up things, if you're looking up how to do something in JavaScript or how to do something in C# even, you're looking at 20 plus years of documentation. You find stuff on Stack Overflow and you look at it, you have to check the date, because if it's from like 2011, .NET is not the same in 2011 as it is in 2025. And JavaScript's the same. There's a billion different ways of solving things in JavaScript. There's libraries, jQuery is around for so long that a lot of results are skewed towards jQuery. So you have to know to filter through that stuff. The AI stuff is weighting it, seemingly, by recency. That's actually a word. Which means that it's likely to discard the stuff from 2011 and present you something that's from 2024, 2025, because it's probably more relevant. So it's doing a little bit better on that search ability. A use I had for AI, I found out there's an equation for calculating stock options, and I used AI to get me the good books on the topic. You could also talk through AI how the equation works and how it breaks things down as well, right? That's one of the for research and stuff like that. I actually have used it. I still need to produce the video, but I've gone through topics and I've had conversations with it, right, where I've helped evolve my own thoughts by having that wall to bounce things off with context. So in that, again, as a tool, I'm not completely against it. I'm fearful for its use in software development. and it's overuse. But I find it's way better at the task than something concrete like code. I mean, check out One Line Stream. One Line has built an application purely through using prompting, and it's a working S3 browser, right? It's helps him produce all the code for it, right? There are reasonable ways of doing what you want it to do. All I'm saying is, I don't want to do that. It doesn't interest me. It's not. It might be a tool, but I don't care. To me, I really don't want to use the technology in that way. I do not want to sit there and go and type in a bunch of English and then have it go off and create an application for me. It just doesn't interest me. It's not as engaging to me. So yeah. Okay, so through whatever methods, doesn't matter how we create this right this second. We may switch this out for something later. It really just needs to be unique, and it's a new GUID, so it's fine. So let's go and close all that. Let's go over here. Let's add this. Introduce API key model and set migrations. Yeah. What do you do in cases where data is needed in one part of your application that is not available in that microservice? Depends on how you distribute in that data. With Liquid Sky, the way that would be is if I have a dependency on a planning item in another service, then I will consume that planning item in that. You can still have planning item in another service. It's just you are not the source of truth. You are essentially a read-only copy of that data. So you would have a representation of that data that you need, and just the pieces of the data you need. You could have an aspect of that data. So it's like if you have user, and user needs to be in accounting and shipping, or customer, say. Customer exists as a concept in accounting. It exists as a concept in shipping. It exists in in sales, right? Customer though means different things in different pieces, or pieces of customer mean different things. The accounting side doesn't necessarily need to know their order history, doesn't need to know their potentially doesn't need to know their address, right? Maybe they're just a zip code or whatever, but accounting might only care about their billing details, but they still have the representation of a customer over there. Shipping will need the address, but they have no need to know anything about the payment details. So the customer aspect in shipping is different than the one, but they are still the customer. They're still represented as a customer. It's why I distribute the data in Liquid Sky with identifier. It's because the same identifier can be represented in different pieces. So don't be tempted to cross your database. Get a copy of that data into your other service. The data you need. Store the data you need, not everything. Don't store an exact copy of the object, because if you need an exact copy of the object, then that to me is a unless it's view like in Liquid Sky, where I need pretty much the exact copy of the object. Only get what you need. Make sense? Okay. If you are new to the stream, if you have any questions, thoughts, opinions on what I'm doing, please feel free to join in. You're more than welcome. I'm currently working on developers.stream. Oh dear. Yeah. I think it's a very relevant conversation these days, and I think it's one that we can't. And like everything else, right? As time goes by, as things evolve, I'm not saying that I will never reassess that opinion, but as it feels right now, I feel that I have a use for it. But if my job becomes dependent upon it, I do not want to do this. I think it should not be ignored. Okay, so let's go and get the UI side of this done. So the streamer profile service is starting to become a dumping ground. I don't like it. This stuff bugs me. Once I've got something called service, it becomes a massive. Oh well, it must live in the service, therefore. Yeah. Make this feel private and encapsulate it in a. No. Okay. So this is task string fetch API key string period identifier. Well, actually, generate API key. Let's call it what I mean. Okay. Go over here. Do this. Oh my goodness me. This is return await send new API, register API key. Always one line. Or do your work thing. Totally understand. So that registers the API key in there. And over here, we'll implement the interface, but not actually implement the interface because, yeah. I don't like how it's doing these inlines. But that's an editor config thing as well. Inline. Expression body. I think that's probably the one I'm after, but hopefully I can answer my follow-up questions before we get too close to the end of the stream. No worries. Yeah, is what that is doing. Arrange. Thing is, I told it to block body. There you go. Before formatting. Yeah. Preview. After formatting expression body. Block body. Yeah, I want to do block body. I know that the expression syntax is perfectly valid, but the style I'm using there. Wrap list pattern. The only other thing I want to fix right this second is the whole tabbing. It looks like it's a resharper thing. The annoying thing is here, this is all assuming resharper. So if you check out this isn't going to make a difference to anything you do. Only this will. So anyway, that's neither here nor there. Edit config. Block body instead of expression body. New methods. Basically, if it's one line, it'll try and format it into an expression rather than a yeah. Generate API key method. So this will provide the, so hopefully by the end of the stream, what I've got in here is the ability to register the API key. That'd be awesome. Yes, that doesn't really move us to an API, but we can put the API and check for the key and the headers and stuff next stream, which will be yeah, I'll update on next week. Account. So right now I'm kind of dumping behavior into the application pages, right? Is it the right way? Potentially not, but this is why I want to review this later, right? I want to clean this up. There's components that are probably necessary, like even this API key probably is a separate component. About me, put tags. So let's do div class equals thought there was a style for like the buttons. Okay, div class equals form. Div input find value equals input dot API key. Class equals form control. Read only. equals true. So the idea there is like right now it's not going to matter if we see it all, right? We can obviously obscure it later so that if you go into your profile on stream or something, I don't want you to see your API key outright, right? You should be able to copy it, but you shouldn't see it. But for right now, for testing purposes, we want it there. What we need here is button type equals button generate click equals, is it on click or click? On click. On click equals private async task, generate API key. We do our auth state again. Probably should get that in the beginning. Oh, because we have to wait it, so we can't do that in the beginning anyway. We have to do it every time. We're gonna get that, and then we're gonna do var API key equals await. Profile service dot generate API key user state dot get user ID. And then input dot API key equals API key. Let's see what it does. What's the worst that happens? Okay. So let's go over here. Let's refresh, make sure we have our tables. There's our API keys table, nothing in it. And let's go to here. Refresh this. Oh, still loading. What I was going to do is play around with the design. But I feel that getting the API in there starts to move the application forward. We can always leave the design as it stands and then open up the ability to tackle issues, right? To some extent, that's lazy. I get it, but yeah. Generate. There you go. You should have an API key. There you go. Done. That's input text, floating MB3, label 4, class equals form label. Why doesn't that behave? Oh, I know why. It's this. Placeholder API key not set. Let's apply that change. Hot reload. Oh, still loading. It's popping up the Chrome window on the other side now. Why is that not going up there? What am I missing? Form floating MB3. Okay, so see, the problem is that API key as well does not belong in that form because it's nothing to do with this. When you hit generate, it's kind of like the Twitch buttons, right? It's nothing to do with the profile, but it's to do with the profile. So I think we'll lay this out slightly different in a minute. That should give me back the same code. It should not give me new code, right? So it's not going to hurt to have that there. Not dealing with active inactive right this second. But I do want that to be similar in style. ARIA required. Label 4, API key, form control, ARIA. How many different areas? Like, this doesn't matter. What? Why? What is that from? That again. So we'll give this a second. I think it's time to rearrange this screen a little bit. I think this is different panels. The profile and the API stuff is separate, so that we'll put these buttons and stuff down the right hand side. Awesome. I've now created a bigger mess because I've left the there, and you don't want to work. No, you don't. You don't want to recompile, do you? Okay. Okay, you win. So regardless, I think the API key stuff's working, right? We can generate an API key. That's awesome, right? How we generate the API key, what we use there, we can reflect on later. Don't need to hide it right this second. It's not going to pose any security problems. Come on, Ryder, restart. Come on, there you go. So let's do a little bit of reorganization. So API key, absolutely, it does not belong inside the form. It doesn't work the same way. So we don't want it there, right? That does not exist. I think it becomes its own control, right? So we go over to components, controls. Let's see how this goes. Blazor component, API key. The reason I'm thinking of it as a control is because it doesn't sit in this form, but putting it in this page as just a field means that I'm going to end up with extra variables in this page, which is going to make this page harder to understand as is. So let's do API key. Let's just go with that with code behind component. Add that. Let's take this piece. Let's take that. And then we're going to have, so we do have an input on this one, but let's have component base, public string API key. And that's going to be that. That's that. That's that. That's that. I'm going to take that code from there. I really should put the code behind in for this. It's starting to get a little bit messy. We probably want a parameter in here. So we probably want to inject, I believe injection works right a second. So we need a profile service and we need the state provider. So state provider and streamer profile service. I believe this works. Probably not what I want, but we can review that later. State provider, profile service, and authentication state provider, and where's get user ID defined? Oh. We're not going to copy that over there right a second. But user ID equals that. user ID, and then API. So we should have a component now for streamer API key, which allows us to clean that up. Probably do the same with the buttons eventually. Still learning my way around the right way to do this. Div class equals let's have a look. Bootstrap 5. Column layout. Bootstrap because it comes as a default template, as a default framework for Blazor. I'm not messing around with too much styling because I do not want to. I do not want to. It's quite obvious. Class equals call. Div class equals call, and then we'll put all these inside of there. And then we'll do div class equals mt5 streamer API key. Can I do that? Okay, let's see what else like. Doesn't need to look great, it just needs to work, and it needs to be at least usable. That's the primary goal right this second. So what we'll do after this is we'll move to create a public API and introduce a handler that will check for the API key coming in with the request. So I'm not sure I want to go to the full authentication side right this second, but we'll create a minimal API, and I think we can register a handler, like a kind of a pipeline, and we'll just validate that the API key exists, and pass in the streamer profile. It exists and is active is the bare minimum right now. And all that is yeah, you're allowed to ask for this data. We'll worry about things like rate limiting and stuff later. That's fine. Okay, so developers.stream, refresh that. We go to 7102, we get there, go to profile. I mean, okay. It works. It doesn't work well, but it works. Let's see if it'll let me change something about it without restarting, because that's driving me crazy. Class equals form. What was it called? Form floating. MB3. Oh. Just why won't you go up there? What am I missing? hold on. Let's just do. Hey, maybe. How are you doing? Frustrated? I'm sorry to hear that. Come on, I just changed the. I'm doing okay today, but my work day hasn't started yet, so we'll see. Sorry you're frustrated though. Today we have been adding API keys into developers.stream. So we started off with trying to add Cake integration, so there's at least the third platform represented. Quickly learned that Cake's documents are lies, or their service doesn't exist. Oh, that's stunning. That helped so much. That looks horrendous. I mean, this works now. I don't know why this works, but it works. Yeah. Awesome. Input text area. Is this got a size? What is size? Who am I? Why? Align items. I think that had something to do with it. Very much so. Apply changes. No, you're not going to do that because why would you work? Why would you work? Did you say cake? Cake. Hmm. Kill him. There you go. So we need to do layout, containers. Container fluid. Nope. If this is what I actually need to do, I'm going to get very frustrated with this process. I'm worrying too much about the way it looks as well, which is not healthy. The API key was, and that's, you need to forget this and buy cake. I need to eat a lot less cake. I want to get back to karate at some point, and that's not going to happen if I keep eating cake. Okay, that's better. It's not perfect, but it works. So we can add pickles. Update that. You can go over here, and pickles is now one of my attributes. I can do that, save that, update that. Pickles is gone. Okay, that's still working. We can generate the API key and get the API key back. Okay. You could throw cake at your enemies. I could, yes. I could. I'm not going to worry about regenerate API key right this second. That's going to be a nice to have later. I had an interview request with a running app company. Was told I could showcase instead of a take home. Thought barely if it would be perfect. They decided they wanted me to do pair programming, leak code, and then a take home React Native project. So I said nope. I think a lot of companies are just kind of, they have their practice, they kind of know what they're doing, what they're expecting from every, like, I've worked where we have a list of questions and a list of expected outcomes, and that's what you fit to. Um, so it's unimaginative, but it stops them from kind of, I think companies get bitten by poor judgment, and then they kind of put procedures in place. That's a bit weird, saying you could do a showcase instead of a take home, and then you could show them barely fit, which is, yeah. Um, that's a bit dumb. Unless they changed who was going to interview, in which case they were like, oh, we can't, they don't have that skill, so we need to go with something we have out of the box, we know. Um, yeah. Anyway. Um, yeah, so hmm, they still require the showcase. So they want you to do the take home and then still show them what you can do. Oh, they want you to show, they want you to build a generic React app and showcase that. Ugh. That sounds like they misunderstood or misrepresented what the showcase was, and thought you'd follow along. Create control for generate streamer key for API, generate API key for streamer. Yeah, ultimately that will have to pull the key in and allow you to regenerate. So the behavior there is probably, yeah. Company hiring processes frustrate me. They're very narrow-minded. Yeah, it's I think companies don't have, how do I put it? I'm trying to say something that I don't know how to word correctly, but I think a lot of talent is lost out on because of general practices. I think the ability to flex every interview. I like to make conversation. I like to say, hey, here's a generic challenge. How do you do this? And even if that comes back as this was a terrible challenge, we can have a discussion and it brings something out, right? And I think companies aren't necessarily equipped to do that all the time. I like um, I want to know that I can talk about stuff. I want to know that you can educate me as much as I can educate you, take our different perspectives, take our different viewpoints, and be able to kind of find a common ground. And so in the past, I've given a coding sample as basically like, hey, how would you do this? And could you unit test it? And what are your challenges with this? Um, and then the intention is not, you can deliver the code that you write before the interview. Um, but then we use that code and that challenge as a talking point because that's mostly what we do, right? We program. Um, I like discussions. I don't mind talking about code, but I want it to be a mutual experience, not a test. Pair programming on leak code sounds like an idea of hell. I'm not a fan of leak code either. I don't think it really is considering most of the time in business software, you are not solving hard, hard problems. You've got a direction, you've got a pattern, you've got a style. It's just putting the pieces in place to do the right thing. Are there still challenges there? Yes, but they're not hard problems all the time. To one lion's point earlier on about like AI and stuff, well, it could boilerplate some of it. It's not always like that, but yeah. The interview process is like painting a Sistine Chapel. The actual job is paint by numbers. Yeah. But I want to know that I can have a conversation with you. If the architecture, if the design of the system doesn't quite work for a problem, I want to know that you and I can have an intelligent conversation. We can see different points. We can argue about those points, but we can get through the problem and solve it and provide a solid solution that we are comfortable with and that we can talk about. That's what matters. It's why I don't feel that saying junior versus senior is necessarily useful anymore, because junior is just a level of exposure, and if I go into a new code base, I'm essentially junior. My programming ability gives me a leg up on potentially getting through that a little quicker, but doesn't necessarily mean I'll be able to solve all the problems immediately. I am reset. So the ability to converse, the ability to voice your opinions and your ideas is and should be encouraged. Yeah, conversation. It always should be a conversation. That's why I don't believe in having architects who oversee things and say this is how it should go. I want a conversation again. Yeah. Okay, so we have the API key in there. The next step, I suppose, is to start laying out the API. So let's do this. New solution folder. Stream API. Source. This is web. This is a web API. This is not Blazor. We're not going to use authentication. This is developers.stream. That's dangerous. We'll go with that for now. Again, we can always talk about options. Thanks for streaming today. I have to drop off for work. Apex, no worries. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming and hanging out, and thank you for the conversation, as always. Apex was showing off his progress on his game framework yesterday on stream. I mean, he's made some really great progress in developing behavior trees and is really starting to like get some head of steam building his game. So it was very cool to watch. And if you like nice chill streams where it's just good to hang out and chat once in a while, or just having someone there who's being productive, Apex is a great stream to be in. Be on Saturday for another stream. Nice. Nice. I will see if I can attend. One of those rare, like, personal engagements this weekend. Yeah, if I get a chance, I'll definitely pop in. I'll definitely drop in and see. But have a good one. Okay. So the way this is going to work is we're going to get rid of the fluff. Get rid of that. We're going to build this really simple, right? As simple as we can do to begin with, and then we'll figure out the knee. We'll figure out layers of difficulty later. So the way this is going to do this is, as we've decided, it's going to go, yes, for streamers or streamer name string. I'm currently going through all the exercise descriptions and filling them out. Nice. 40,000 lines of JSON. That's significant. So this is going to return hello world. With display name, adds the endpoint name method to the metadata collection for all endpoints producing. Streamer by name with description. So I think a valid use of a valid thing to do with this would be to try and figure out the OpenAPI doc stuff, because creating a public API, creating the documentation with it is something that you should be considering. I don't often do it with Liquid Sky because it's an internal API. I don't need to document it because I'm using it. As other developers come onto the project, then those conversations can be had and the documentation can be applied where necessary. But people who are working in a component of the system should understand the APIs available to them. I don't necessarily think that everything needs vast documentation initially. That being said, I don't think you should discount documenting where necessary. I just think that if you go off and document something for the sake of documenting, it's going to be in what you think is the challenge. If you have a second person, it's like refactoring after you've only got one method and saying, oh, well, what if I might need a second version of this or third version of this? I'll refactor it, right? It's just premature optimization. So documenting something before you have a need to document it is a bit premature. However, being that this is going to be a public API, I do want to make sure that the documentation is, it might not be correct, but it will be present and you'll be able to review it. So description, search for a streamer by their name, username. Actually, probably should make that username. That username in your current platform. So if I go into my YouTube stream and I have my bot running and someone posts a message and say, oh, this person's just posted a message, then I'm going to search for them by their name in YouTube. If they go into Twitch, you're going to search for them by their name in Twitch. And because we have their streams registered, I can't bring it up right now because it's shut down, we should be able to find them. I agree with that, but I would add that writing documentation after a certain stable state, whatever that means to you, is beneficial as a kind of baseline, even if there aren't other people involved in the project not using it. It depends. If it is very complicated and it requires some level of documentation, I tend to agree. But I don't think writing documentation for the sake of documentation is useful. Other people being there, asking the questions, tends to tell you, oh, there's some confusion here. Let's make sure we're clear about this. Now we need to document it. So if I come back around on something, again, look at the way I build the things. I build the things as small, really explicit naming. If I can't figure it out, documentation is just going to be a load of words that don't really add value to me, right? Because I've already made them quite wordy and I've made them very specific to a task. I'm not creating these massive methods or these massive processes. Now, that being said, in Liquid Sky, there's nothing that complicated right this second. So, you know, as things progress, some of the rules, some of the interactions between the components do need a level of documentation. Because that workflow is going to be less obvious at a glance. So, but I don't feel that it's necessary to just document for the sake of documenting. I think you have to make sure that the case is necessary. In this case, it's public API. 100% needs public documentation. You don't know how I think. I have to figure out how to share how I think publicly. So any public API should have documentation, without a doubt. Search your streamer by their username in your current platform. I.e., no, I don't need an IE. Let's just not worry about that right a second. Again, the purpose of making this an open source project is that people can contribute to this. So if I go and try and solve all the problems up front, then there's not really much to do. So the goal here, what I'm trying to figure out is, can I put add endpoint filter? Filters. Just an exact what I said I shouldn't do, but never mind. API key filter. I think this is the right thing. Endpoint filter. Context dot HTTP context. And there's an example of AI jumping ahead. It's not wrong though. If next context async it's a good point, but I also have additional thoughts on cases where it would make more sense to write documentation more often than not. But we are nearing that time, and I don't want to keep you from getting done what you need to accomplish before ending the stream. Oh yeah, good point. It is that time, isn't it? I am not a big documentation person. That is probably very apparent by now. I'm not I don't like reading too much. I like nice, easy, discoverable APIs. I like, yeah, that ain't happening. I will do my very best though. It's why I focus so much on things being clearer, because so we need a repository in there. But ultimately, what it should be able to do there is do API endpoint filter, API key filter. There you go. Now that should allow us to deny that request, right? Yeah. Okay. I would not wish that on anyone, by the way. So let's go raid Beaks today. Okay. So the basics are starting to evolve, right? What I need to do now is go and figure out how to get a repository in there, make the request to the repository, probably put some level of caching in here so we don't end up just constantly hitting the database with every request. So yeah, what we'll do is we'll put in some caching. Ultimately, we'll have to deal with rate limiting and stuff. So we get to learn some stuff there, right? But the basics of the API is starting to come around. So we've got the API key in there now. We'll get this in on there on next stream. So regarding next stream, next week is a real mess for me. So the likelihood is there will be no streams next week. I have to get my car sorted. I have to travel to Texas. I have to get back from Texas very late. So the likelihood is I'm just going to skip streams next week, take the week off, and not stress getting online. That being said, if you are interested in continuing talking about this project, if you do have any questions, you are more than welcome to go and check this out. This code is available. You can go and pull everything I've done if you want to go off and tinker with it, if you want to learn some of the things that are done. If you want to see if you can get the kick integration working, you're more than welcome to do it and make a PR. It is on a branch if you are interested in checking it out. But yeah, so I think that I'm going to skip streams next week, but check out the Discord in case. I will likely not make any progress in this until we next stream it, though, because that's part of the purpose of doing this on stream is to build this for the community. So let's. No, he's about to raid out. So Frank's not streaming today. Here's one line. Thank you very much for joining me. As always, thank you very much for your support. If you're not aware, One Lion streams Wednesdays through Fridays, and on Fridays he has a community day stream where we can talk about things. In general, you can jump in the Discord voice if you choose to, and have actual chat with someone. AI has been the overruling topic of late. Not surprising. Canny, hello. But that doesn't mean there's no other topics available, right? Discussion on all sorts of things is, as long as it's technology based, then it is generally good. So, okay, let's overwhelm Fullbox. Did a couple of code reviews to start off with. Nice. People posted their projects. That's cool. But anyway, I gotta go. I gotta go work. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for the great week. The birthday stream, the 200 episodes of Liquid Sky was really a positive thing for me. That mean making tons of progress there, moving that project forward. We got the ID stuff in, the version in there, so that's all working and coming along nicely now. So lots of next steps on Liquid Sky. But yes, thank you for joining me. Take care. Have a great rest of your day. Have a great weekend if I do not see you around. And don't forget, I don't think I'll be able to do it. Oh, no shout out. Maybe streams on weekends, on Saturday mornings. Maybe stream is a good place to go and hang out. Nice and chill. Works on Barely Fit. Potentially some Dead by Daylight gaming. But also a very great place to go and hang out. So thank you for joining me. Take care. Have a great weekend. Bye all.